Welcome to the Property Elite podcast. I'll be your host, Jen Lehman, chartered surveyor and co-founder of Property Elite. Stay tuned each week for more on industry hot topics, market updates and new RICS guidance.
In this week's podcast, we look at subsidence, a potential cause of cracking in buildings. This is essential knowledge for RICS APC and associate RICS candidates pursuing the Building Pathology and Inspection competencies. So what is subsidence? RICS defines subsidence in their consumer guide as the downward movement of the foundations of a building due to changes in the supporting strata. If the foundations move, then this can lead to movement and cracking of the above ground elements of the property. Remember, there are many causes of cracking in buildings, not just subsidence. A competent surveyor advising on building pathology will be able to follow the trail, investigate the cause of cracking, and advise a client on the potential causes and remedies. Why does subsidence occur? Subsidence can occur when the property is built on shrinkable soil, such as clay. The moisture content of the underlying ground can therefore reduce, typically to 1 metre in depth, in prolonged hot, dry weather. Similarly, if a property is built on clay soil, nearby vegetation can pull moisture into the ground, leading to the underlying ground drying out. This is the most common cause of subsidence, as the shrinkage due to the clay soil is exacerbated by up to 6 metres in depth in drought conditions by the additional impact of the vegetation. A leaking drain or water main can wash away soil with a high sand or gravel content, for example chalk, leading to the underlying ground shrinking. And former mining activity leads to unstable underlying ground conditions and potential collapse of fill-in material. Modern foundations are far more substantial than foundations in older buildings, which helps them to deal with minor subsidence-related movement. What are the physical signs of subsidence? When inspecting a property, potential signs of subsidence include new or expanding cracks externally in masonry or internally in plasterwork, ripped or crinkled wallpaper, doors and windows sticking without any clear reason, or solid ground floors sloping or dipping. Subsidence-related cracks tend to be diagonal, wider at the top than the bottom, over 3 mm wide, about the width of a 10p coin, and located above doors and windows. We recommend reading BRE Digest 251 in relation to assessing cracks in houses. We have also got additional reading on cracking in our blog archive. What advice should I give if I suspect subsidence? You may need to recommend further specialist surveys or investigations, for example geological, looking at soil moisture levels, or CCTV drain surveys if a leaking drain is suspected. You may also need to recommend monitoring and measurement of subsidence-related cracks. This will require a telltale or crack gauge and should be for a period of 12 months or more, which allows for seasonal fluctuations. The telltale should be fixed over the crack and the gauge read on a regular basis, ideally every 4 to 8 weeks, to confirm if the crack is widening and at what rate. For a pre-purchase sale, the identification of subsidence is a substantial issue. It could lead to a substantial renegotiation of the purchase price or even withdrawal from the purchase, depending on the risk appetite and position of the client. If you are advising the owner of a subsidence-affected property, then you should recommend that they contact their insurer and take steps to remedy the issue. How can subsidence be remedied? The remedy depends on the cause of the subsidence. For example, if subsidence is caused by a leaking drain, then the issue needs to be remedied and the subsidence should cease. Drains, gutters and plumbing should be regularly maintained to avoid future issues. Alternatively, if subsidence is being caused by a tree, then the tree may need to be removed or pruned to manage the moisture that it draws out of the soil. Complete removal of an old, large tree may, however, in some cases cause further problems as excess moisture is returned to the soil, causing heave and upward movement of the building. Some cracks caused by clay soils, and which are up to 5 mm wide, may be seasonal and open and close regularly. If they are not wider than this and close in the wetter winter months, then regular redecoration may be sufficient to deal with them. Any cracks should be closely monitored in case they do not close regularly or become wider than 5 mm. If subsidence is severe and caused by underlying clay soil, then underpinning may be required. This involves repairing and reinforcing the foundations, for example injecting geopolymer resin into the surrounding soil, excavating underneath the foundations and adding concrete until more stable ground is reached, using concrete beams to support the existing foundation, or installing piled foundations underneath the existing foundations. Subsidence can be a costly issue to remedy, particularly where underpinning is required. However, this is usually a last resort remedy and only required in around 5% of subsidence-affected buildings. Most buildings insurance policies will cover subsidence-related damage to a property and its outbuildings, although with a substantial excess being payable. If the subsidence is caused by coal mining, then the claim is dealt with the coal authority instead, although the buildings insurance provider should also be notified. Homeowners should always check their policy wording in the event of subsidence-related damage claim and notify the insurer as soon as a potential claim is identified.
Thanks for listening to the Property Elite podcast this week. Head to our website to check out our full blog, free and paid support resources and services, free consultation for every single RICS APC and AssocRICS candidate, and also ask us any questions you have via the website chat blog. See you next week.